And we are live with another Roll Hide, Don't Die episode. Tonight I have Gregory and Jared with us, so why don't you two, starting with Gregory, tell me who you are, tell me what you do.
Hey everyone, I am Gregory Festo. You can find me on the internet as 1n20DnD. I have a YouTube channel where I'm doing a daily vlog currently. Mostly that's where I'm focused. Although I've done also live play games on Roll20 and so forth for D&D and other RPG games. And I'm happy to be here for this awesome conversation tonight.
Looking forward to it for sure. The daily D&D vlog kind of stuff is what really pushed me from my I'm just recording actual play to like I'm gonna start making content stuff because I started doing the RPG a day stuff back last year, and I was like, hey, these like 3 to 5 minute videos are really cool. So that's what started Roll Hide Don't Die. Was if I'm sitting down like 3 or 4 to 10 minutes a day and just talking about a particular topic, wouldn't it be fun to, as I have time due to work, pick a topic, talk about it for like 10 minutes, and then be like, what do you guys think? So that's where all of
Right.
this came from.
Awesome.
Very cool.
And Jared, what you got for us?
Hi, I'm Jared Bartels. I am the Master of Dungeons for Proficient with Skulls, which is a actual play 5e podcast. Comes out every Sunday, and it's in the homebrewed world of Telethala. So it's only homebrewed for a little while longer because actually, starting in at the end of this month of May, we're actually publishing the World of Telethala source book. It'll be on Drive Through RPG. It is fully illustrated, 130 plus pages of great, sweet D&D content that I'm really, really excited about. So yeah.
You mentioned it in the one shot that I ran. Both these guys were actually in a one shot I ran. What was it, like a month ago?
Yeah,
And
about
Lord Cluck.
tons of fun. But he mentioned the book, and I won't be here when it comes out, but I'm looking forward to still getting the information, and hopefully while I'm out of state, I can like poke around and take a look at it. But
Yeah.
I'll be including it in the description to this video once this is on YouTube, and I'm sure I'll be, you know, shamelessly plugging it all over Twitter because
That'd be awesome.
I like promoting everyone else's stuff, and that's where a lot of this kind of stuff comes from too. Is my one shots were, I did a lot of stuff for like my friends and in random discords, but then I started doing the like, hey, if I'm hanging out with these folks on Twitter and we're talking about stuff, like wouldn't it be cool to get 4 different channels and then one who's GMing and run, because then you have 4 different communities who are all, you have everyone following Proficients with Skulls, you have everyone following 1n20DnD, and then you have all the OneCritWonder folks, and I'm sure there's some like crossover between them, but like that's a great way to instantly expose everyone to multiple
bunch of
communities. So it's much
Yeah.
easier than finding 1 and 2 followers and stuff at a time.
Yep, doing it by yourself. I agree. Community, man. It's all about this community.
That's why I started doing the like for the follow Fridays. I was looking at followers who were people who were following me who I'd interacted with but were still at like less than about 200 followers, because yeah, it's always fun to do the follow Friday things, but if I'm doing the same 5 people every week, like
Yep.
most of the people who saw that post last week are like, I'm already following all these people. I have decided that they're not worth my follow. But I wanted to do follow Fridays for smaller accounts because I know how much that first hurdle really sucks. Once you get past that couple hundred viewers or a couple hundred follows, when you have people to spread your stuff, it
Yeah.
grows exponentially. So,
Yep.
but
That's a
right,
great
less
idea.
about Twitter and more about RPGs. Let's get to how each of us started with RPGs, and then we'll move into, and I guess it can be the same conversation, but how you started, and then at what point you shifted from a player to GM, or did you start because you had to be the GM? What was everyone's intro? Who's up first? Ready, set,
Go ahead,
Jared.
Jared.
I was gonna say go ahead, Gregory, but okay, you said it first, so I'll go. Yeah, so I've been playing D&D for about 75,000 years. I was 11 maybe when my cousin took me through a Dragonlance module. I don't know if anybody recognizes or knows Dragonlance. By
Oh,
the way,
yes.
the books are amazing.
Yeah.
Dragonlance Chronicles. Took me through Dragons of Winter something as a player. I played Sturm Brightblade just for any Dragonlance nerds out there. Anyway, it was a great experience. I loved it so much. We probably played 2 or 3 sessions through that. And the next thing I knew immediately, I was like, I want to tell that story. I want to be able to put my spin on that story and how it goes. And so at literally 11, 12 years old, I DM'd the next time we all got together. And it was rough, actually, the first time around. It didn't dissuade me, but I remember getting to the end. I took everybody through a haunted house type of thing. It was like an old Ravenloft module. And at the end of it, I couldn't figure out how to get the big, bad, evil guy into the mix. I don't remember exactly what happened. I remember going, oh, they just killed something, and that was basically the end of the module. And everybody was like, oh, wah, wah, wah. But anyway, I think I've gotten a little better since then. I've been playing for 20 years since then.
That's
Nice.
awesome.
Yeah.
Similarly, for my experience, so I happened to share a birthday with Dungeons and Dragons. Well, not a birthday, but a birth year. So I was born in 74, same year that officially D&D was supposedly created. Well, so in about the same time in my life, about 10, somewhere between 10 and 12, and you know, it used to be on TV. There were commercials. There was a D&D cartoon. So somehow at some point, I actually got the red box, the beginner set. And I was just thinking about it today because I knew we were having this conversation. It's like, I actually remember my very first experience as DMing, which really wasn't DMing, was just creating a dungeon with their random dungeon creation thing. And that book is gone, unfortunately. I still have the players module, but not the DMs module.
Right, yeah.
So like someday I have to replace that. But then after that, so I tried running a game a little bit, but I found a couple guys in middle school that played, and then we started playing advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Like that was the first real D&D I actually was playing. I did a little bit with my brother with the basic, but advanced D&D was where I really dug my feet in. And then in high school, so I moved across country and started high school. And sure enough, like within the first few months of being in a new school, I found a dude who played D&D and other RPGs, Car Wars and whatnot. And he and I just hit it off. And then, but he has been my DM literally since I was 14 years old.
Oh,
and
wow.
I'm going to be 45 this year. So
Wow.
long history with this dude. And he loved DMing and he was so good at it. He did it all the time. He's been the GM for almost all of our games. A couple years ago when 4th edition was out, and I got this itch. I'm like, you know what? I need to find some other groups to play with. And I went to a game shop and started playing there. And there was other people running the game. And I'm like, hey, I should throw my hat in. So I did a couple of one-shots for the, Players League in 4th edition. I'm like, this is super fun. And then 5th edition came out, and I was just like immediately in love because I think it's such a great system. And I found out about Roll20, and I went and searched out games on Roll20, and I found a game. I joined it. The group was great. And our DM got really whack and weird and did some crazy stuff. And I, for one, and then the other players were all like, hey, this ain't working for us. And I tried to have a conversation with him. Long story short, he fell off the map. And I'm like, well, I'll run the game. Why not? So that was really my first like serious experience as a DM. And that's been going on for like 2 years or something. Mm-hmm. And so on my YouTube channel, that's if you watch the Agic, Kingdom of Agic games, that's the one where I've turned them into like we're doing Princes of the Apocalypse. So it's cool. Been fun. I love it now, but I've way more experienced as a player.
Yeah. I'm weird because I grew up in the middle of nowhere, so I was D&D adjacent for a long while, but never like got to do anything. So got exposed to it a little bit in middle school, and that's a fun process. It's all Pokemon's fault actually, because the Pokemon games came out and everyone was playing the Game Boy games, and then that led to the card game, and Pokemon cards were the gateway drug to Magic the Gathering, and then Magic the Gathering led me to the Wizards of the Coast website, and so trying to read more about the lore and story and stuff to Magic the Gathering led me into like a free-form roleplay area for. It took place on Dominaria, the world of Magic, basically. And I was like, hey, this role-playing stuff is kind of cool. And also, Wizards had D&D stuff plastered everywhere because it was, the height of third edition and 3.5 was about to come out. So that's when I got exposed to it, but I was in the middle of nowhere and there wasn't a ton of nerds where I was. So like I could keep reading about it after school on the internet, but like no one I knew would be interested in that stuff. So I finally hit 18 and I joined the military, and that's where I wandered into like, hey, there are other nerds in the world, and I am now near them, because I started in a particularly nerdy career field, I guess. I originally joined as a cryptological linguistics specialist.
Whoa, cool.
So there's nerds in
Dang.
that. And
No,
if you
I
thought
don't
it was
want
weird being the one nerd in the back of the class, like everyone else is into like Friday night football and you're the weirdo in the back like reading Lord of the Rings, well, take 6,000 of those people and put them in the same tiny place in Monterey, California, and it'd be like, ready, go.
Yeah.
And so it was, the guy across the hall from me was the like super audio nerd. The guy down the hallway was the one who's like, what you need? Photoshop? Cool, I got that. He was that guy, and everyone had their specific types of nerdery, but
Right.
there was D&D and in fact Star Wars to be found. So my first actual sitting down and playing game was right before 3.5 came out, third edition. And then that continued, and I was just a player, and that continued until 3.5 came out. But then one guy showed up and was like, check it out, it's D20 Star Wars. So it's basically all the third edition we already know,
Right.
but lightsabers though.
That's
So
Also
it's
lightsabers.
like, we're like, all right, enough like orcs and elves and stuff. Let's go play in space. So we played around in space for a little bit, and then I'm military. I bounce around. So played some fourth edition when it first came out in. I was in Arizona at the time, so had a work group. Played some 4E. Then we all split up because people split up. And so like I had to DM a couple of one shots, and fourth edition was the first time where I was like, I could probably run this, because just entering third edition and being like, I can barely like I have index cards just to
So
know
much.
like
much.
what I need to roll, because
Mhm.
I'm a fighter barbarian, and I've had to do this for the wife's character too. Like, this is what you roll when you are power attacking. Here's your index card for when you are raging.
Yeah.
Here's your index card if you change from your longsword to your great axe. And so like way too much stuff for me to even think about properly organizing the game. It wasn't the fear of telling the story, it was the fear of balance, right? And fourth edition was the first time where things were balanced enough where I was like, I could run some one shots. So I did some one shots, and then bounced through Korea, played in a long Pathfinder game that lasted a year, and then got back, and I was playing in a Pathfinder game once I got back to the States when fifth edition started coming out. And I was like, I can run this. Right? Like Pathfinder is fun to play. The prestige classes and all that stuff are my jam. Like, I love the amount of options that 3.x has, but as a DM, like right now, if we wanted to stop this interview and go play D&D, I could do that with 5th
100%.
edition. I could go play 5th edition right now with nothing prepped.
Seriously.
And just go, this is probably a mostly balanced fight. You two guys are going to play. I'll find two people that have never played before, and we'll teach them while we're playing. Ready, go.
Yep.
Totally.
But like, if I needed to sit down and do some 3.5 characters, like,
not so much.
we're gonna need some time.
I literally taught a buddy of mine and his 6-year-old how to play this game, and I just said, don't worry about anything. I'm just going to start telling a story, and then I'm going to tell you what to do when you need to do it. And that's how easy 5e is, and that's how I think inclusive it can be too. So
that's
fabulous.
That's one of my little like one crit on Reddit rants is like, people need to stop worrying about knowing all of the rules and all of the character sheet before they start playing.
Totally.
As a player, the way that most games should in the perfect world be is you're sitting down and you're learning the game and you're paying attention and stuff, but you don't need to be worried about understanding what every single skill down there does. What you need to know is, I tell the DM I want to climb on the box and do a backflip, and then the DM says, okay, you do that, or says, okay, in order to do that, I need you to make these rolls.
Yep.
And that needs to be the style of the game, not the people that just throw a dice at the table and go, perception check. Okay, well,
yeah, that's irritating.
Oh God, you don't know how to do it. Oh God. Oh.
Yeah. That's one of
And
the
so,
coolest things. So I have, I guess, the longest experience here for playing and all that. One of the coolest things in my experience, and this is just my experience, is that in the last 3 years has been the major revolution, in my opinion, is move from like most of the games that I was aware of or played in were hack and slash.
Yeah.
And this switch to story based, like RP games is awesome as far as I'm concerned. Like,
I'm right there with you. Yeah.
having
I
fun and
was
telling a good story is so much more important than the rules.
I like the way I've had way more games like the one shot that we ran in 5th edition where I'm like, okay, well, they're playing with a chicken. I can let them do that. And if we don't see combat today, like
Right.
that's their fault, but it's okay. I've had way more of those kind of games in 5th edition, not just because of people are more apt to get into it since it's an easier, smaller starting step, but also people are more prone to be like, well, my character spends a bunch of time worshiping a chicken instead of like, I built this guy to be the best shield slamming, knock prone guy. Like there's still power builds out there, of course. There's still some
Right.
fun
Oh,
warlock
100%.
and fighter builds and stuff. But I find less of the like, I purposely built my character across these 4 classes with these 6 feats and these things and these skills so that I can do this one thing. So I'm going to keep doing
Right.
that thing in combat. Yeah,
Hey,
there's
Yeah.
I'm curious how you feel, or if you've gotten any exposure to Ravnica, since you mentioned that was sort of your gateway.
so
I mean, Ravnica being the latest
the
D&D
book,
world, that's
right?
kind of an adaptation from Magic the Gathering.
So have not played there.
Yeah,
Um,
likewise.
I did magic in high school and then stopped when I joined the military, of course. Had basic training, had a training there in Texas, but then when I got to California and it was, Nerd Haven, ran into some magic nerds. And I had most of my cards and stuff with me. So got some new cards, and that's about the time that Ravnica dropped. And
Oh,
I still liked playing Magic. Mostly, I'm one of those people that like tries to do like really cool 4 card combos and is not super concerned about how tough things are. But like,
right.
I like solving puzzles via cardboard crack.
Right. Sweet.
But Ravnica came out, and I was really interested in the lore. And I'd always been interested in Magic lore, but like the setting super interested me because I've always kind of liked urban political intrigue type stuff, which is why Eberron was always an interest of mine. So when it came out, I was like, dude, we should totally D&D here someday. And then I could never get people who were interested in that kind of stuff. Everyone
Right.
wanted medieval England stomping through the woods and killing orcs.
Right,
Right.
right.
Now it's out, and I still haven't got to play there. But between Ravnica coming out, the Wayfinder's Guide to Eberron, and then the new Eberron book, whose name currently escapes me, it's both M's. Somebody will remind me. But super excited to get more people into those kind of urban settings where it's about faction warfare and political intrigue
Yeah.
and power struggles and assassinations and long con kind of stealing instead of just smash and grab stuff, like working out of a location for a long period of time, whereas a lot of D&D adventures are 5 people who nomadically go through
Yeah.
random towns, get to a new town, introduce to people, find out who the quest givers are, do the quest in that area, and then move on.
Well, and they
Right.
also go like, here's the plan. Okay, the plan didn't work. Just smash and grab, or
Yeah.
just kill everything, like one way or the other.
Well, you
Totally.
failed diplomacy.
Yeah.
I get out my
Exactly.
axe.
Yep.
Totally. Hey, Jared, you mentioned Dragonlance, and it's
Yeah.
hard to see, I'm sure, but back right around here behind me is Dragons of Autumn Twilight.
Oh wow. Yeah.
So back to like when I was 10, 12 years old,
Yeah.
somebody, that book came out in, I think, 84, something
Yeah.
like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
I hated reading before that. Saw that book. It's like 400
Yeah.
pages or something
Yep.
ridiculous. I picked it up, did not stop reading it for like 4 or 5 nights in a row, like stayed up all night because it was that good to me
So
with a flashlight.
Yep.
And I read it then when I was 10, 12, whatever.
Yep.
And I'm like, about a couple months ago, actually, I think might have been Liam O'Brien mentioned it in a tweet or something.
Okay.
I'm like, I should read those again. So I'm almost to the end of book 1 of Chronicles?
So I haven't read them for a long, long time, but I've read them. The Chronicles, the first 3 books. I mean, there's a ton of Dragonlance books, right?
Right,
I've
of
read
course.
most of them, but the Chronicles, the first 3 books, I've read 5 or 6 times over the
Nice.
years each. They are, and I did the exact same thing. There was one other series. It's Terry Brooks. It's The Sword of Shannara.
Of
I don't know. It
course.
came out. It was a little bit earlier than that book, but not much. The Sword, the Elf Stones, and the Wish Song of Shannara.
Yeah.
Amazing books, and they're even the Sword of Shannara is like, it's like War and Peace. It's a huge book. But those 2 trilogies kind of paved the way for. I mean, you see behind me. I don't know if you can see behind me. I have dozens and dozens, and I read fantasy novels any chance I could get for my whole life. Right, like it's it's kind of like my guilty little pleasure. I would always read on my last adventure, which it was an adventure, my last vacation. I read Timeless by R.A. Salvatore, the last Drizzt book. So,
Sweet.
yeah, those three books you talk about, those Chronicles, are still some of the best books I've ever read, and I've read, like I said, probably almost all the Forgotten Realms books, all of those different pieces. Those Dragonlance books are great.
Do you guys pull from those stories when you're creating your adventures? Because I haven't done much homebrew.
The one, like my first DM tip for everyone is, don't worry about preparing for everything. Like, don't be ready for everything, just be ready for anything. And my second one is, if it's not nailed down, steal it.
Yeah.
So, and I've had a couple of my DM tip tweets that are the same way. You don't even have to steal from fantasy. So I can't tell you how many of my one shots are an episode of Star Trek with all the sci-fi mumbo jumbo just converted to magic stuff. So like the episode where they find a creature that's killing all the miners, but then it's just the last of its species trying to protect the nest. I've done that, except it was a bunch of dwarves up in a town called Stonehaven up in the mountains, and they had stumbled on some beast down there that was just protecting its nest. Literally an episode of Star Trek. Now it's a sword and sorcery adventure.
Awesome.
Yeah, I have read so many books throughout my whole life that it's almost like the way I think is not different from the way those books have shaped like my thinking, right? So the way I DM is just, I'm sure I steal those things almost without even thinking about it, because it's just part of who I am, and like the way that I grew up and reading those books and thinking about, oh, that's cool, but what if I just added this or changed this a little bit or move this around? And I think that's kind of the way I DM and write as well. So yeah.
So interesting question, because Gregory has brought up 2 different settings now, Ravnica and the Dragonlance stuff. Favorite campaign setting, one you've played the most, the one that you're most comfortable with, even if it's your homebrew settings. Is there a particular world that's like your default or your jam? Anybody?
Yeah, so for me, so my homebrew world has been, as I said, I've been DMing for a long time, so my homebrew world has been kicking around in my head for 20 years or plus, and I've been actually thinking and writing it down for 5 or 6 years, and I've actually been producing this book for about 2 years. So it's obviously the one I'm the most comfortable in. It's kind of one where I can, although my players might disagree with me because there is so much lore in it. Sometimes I forget specific lore in it, and they'll like cue me up for something. I'll be like, I actually don't remember that one. I got to look it up. But it's the one I can easily recall the most things to. But other than my homebrew world, I would definitely say Forgotten Realms is just the simple one that I've read the most of the Forgotten Realms, so it's really great to see the maps and be like, oh, that thing happened here in that one book. So
right on.
Yeah. I like Forgotten Realms as a default just because I feel like so much of the work is done for me that I can run any kind of adventure I want, and then depending on what the party wants or needs, I can just direct them to a part of the Forgotten Realms where that will work. If they're looking for jungle survival, I can aim towards Chult or something. If they're looking for big urban stuff, we can go to Waterdeep or Baldur's Gate or Neverwinter. If they're looking for frontier, we can head east out into stuff. So it's just a comfortable place for me to go. If it's a new group or a one shot or whatever, I can always fall back on Forgotten Realms, and that's why I can appreciate that it's the default for 5e. But I am really hoping to see more love for other stuff. Because I would very much like, Eberron or Spelljammer type
Yeah.
stuff to be
Dark
more
Sun.
Dark Sun. I've wanted to run something in Dark Sun,
Mhm.
since I got into the game. But
Yeah.
again, like
Same.
I can't find the people who want to do it. And I know there's people out there, but I feel like most times I'm finding a lot of GMs who also have their own ideas and they would like to play, but then I almost feel like, man, they're going to get halfway through whatever I got going and go, this is not as cool as what I had planned.
Right.
And so I have that kind of stage fright. Also, I have a cat hair right here. So
Oh, gosh.
everyone keeps wondering why I'm playing with my hat.
I guess one of the things about Forgotten Realms, it's like it's the baseline, right? It's sort of the easy go-to because that's essentially what the worlds are sort of based off of. And I mean, it's easy to go back to there. I think for me, I like Ravenloft myself, like of the
so
worlds
much,
that I've
yeah.
played in,
Yeah.
because I mean, this was second edition, like a modified home ruled second edition that my DM was running for us. But when he took us to Ravenloft, and I think I did it twice, maybe even like once, like years and years ago,
Right.
and then once just a few years back, maybe 4 or 5. And it's funny because I'm not really a horror flick person, but I love playing paladins. So this whole like the dark light thing,
Yep.
like you mentioned Sturm Brightblade, I absolutely can relate to Sturm
Yes.
on a certain level, because of that. But I feel more like I lean towards the Tannis characters.
Right. Oh yeah.
Like the peacekeeper role
Yep.
or whatever.
Yep.
But
Definitely.
So interesting question, because a lot of folks do what's your favorite class in D&D? Well, here's a flip on that. As a GM or as a DM, what's your favorite? Do you have a favorite class where you're like, man, I can really write like a good rogue story. I can like really work a warlock patron, or are you really good at coming up with stuff for your paladins and clerics, like that god patron type roles? Like, is there someone that you particularly enjoy writing for?
Gregory, why don't you start?
Okay, actually, I have a very probably unique answer to that, because with my limited experience in the DM seat, and again, not really focusing too much in the homebrew yet, what I found is that I'm thinking ahead, because the group I'm running on, like the weekly Wednesday game, I'm thinking of like where they're going to go next. Like once they've dealt with this problem with the cults, then what? And I've sort of incorporated a little bit of backstories from the characters. So I actually have a really interesting answer to that, is that I think multi-class characters are probably the easiest, because it's a real easy story hook.
Right.
Like, why did okay, I'm going to use a specific example. You're a druid. This is from our game. You're a druid. Why you want to multi-class into wizard? Why?
Right.
And that backstory hook now makes it real easy for me to then write something very clean, and it's going to be super fun. I'm getting chills thinking about moving into that story.
Yeah, very
cool. I think druids are the one that's kind of the hardest for me to write for, but I think the one I can do best is your rogues and your wizards, and I think a lot of that comes from them being like the things that I play the most if I can.
Sure.
But if a rogue is really into the long con kind of stuff, I like that role play setting up. I don't know if you guys have read The Lies of Locke Lamora. Definitely read that.
I will.
It's great. Scott Lynch, I believe, is the author there. But there's just so many great examples of that kind of rogue that I like to play. Again, there's nothing wrong with the smash grab rogues, but there's scenes in that book where like they're trying to steal something from someone, so they start the relationship to start the con, but then specifically dress up like, for brevity's sake, law enforcement, and then come to that person and say, hey, this is a master thief and they're trying to steal from you. Let them keep doing it so that we can build the case to get them. So let them keep stealing from you. So the guy then continues to let them basically shit talk him for 2 chapters and, you know, gut him for all the money
Mm-hmm.
because he's waiting on the law enforcement to like come in and be like, "Ha, we got you." But, you know, it was the thieves the whole time. And those kinds of things are way more fun for me to like set up that interaction with NPCs and stuff because I love political intrigue stuff,
Right.
like I said.
Cool.
That's cool.
But Wizards, I really dig the power struggle there. Like, as a person, how do you handle the fact that if you wanted to, you could snap your fingers and, you know, melt castle walls and kill everyone in the room and that kind of stuff? Like, yeah, a lot of the other characters have really powerful abilities, but one of the fantastical things about sword and sorcery games is that sorcery. And so Wizard has always been my favorite of the Wizard, Warlock, Sorcerer. And just the amount that I've played them makes it easier for me to write those hooks, whether it's the studious, like, I worked in the archives my whole life, how did I end up adventuring type character, or the I want to become a, you know, demigod, power hungry wizard type characters. So
Right.
it's enough for me.
So I think for me, and we didn't plan this, but I'm going to actually go with 3 kind of different classes than you guys talked about, which is I think the cleric, warlock, and then the paladin fits in the cleric kind of area a little bit, right? I think they're the ones that I find the easiest to write for, because what I find easiest is to kind of write from, because you're kind of the god of the world, right? So to write from a god's perspective about how this is going to work. And what I really find interesting about the warlock and the cleric / paladin, not that they're the same thing, I get it, but they both kind of, they're on friendly relationships with their gods, right? Where the warlock may or may not be. I really like the interplay between what's the difference between a warlock and a cleric, and it's not always this really solid black line. It could be a very thin gray line, and what does that look like? And I think that sets up a world of adventure. Literally, like you can play with that for a long time over a campaign and over multiple campaigns. So I really like writing for cleric, paladin / warlocks. So.
My last warlock was actually a cleric warlock multiclass. That was a very interesting build. So I'm in the back of my mind curious how you would have handled that, because it was a nautical adventure and I was the ship's quartermaster, but I was a cleric warlock, and the warlock's patron was basically the god of the deeps, you know, the god of the depths of the ocean, and the cleric's god was also a god of the sea. But essentially I smushed them together to basically say this person worships both halves of Davy Jones' locker, like the big scary like the ocean will consume you part of it, as well as the if you respect it and follow all the superstitions, the ocean will get you where you need to go. So she did all the, like, you have to have a cat on board and you can't sail if the weather is this way, and like all of those kind of things. But it was all also flavored, because I reflavored all of her abilities like a Caribbean voodoo witch doctor. So like it was not a cleric who like waved his hands and did the like glowing yellow I'm healing you. It was all like, oh, I have an herb for that, let me put, you know, essentially smelling salts under their nose to kick them back to consciousness. It was all like herbal stuff and poisons and magics and that kind of stuff. So it was a very interesting character.
That's very cool. Yeah. That's very cool. In Proficient with Skulls and in the book, actually, one of the subclasses we have is a madness cleric. Right. And so what does that mean? Right. Yeah. So, so what does that mean? Right. Because it borders very closely to a warlock patron. Right. And you think about, well, what is the benefit? Why would you purposefully worship a cleric of madness? And I think the concepts that we're kind of exploring are concepts of like, well, this one perspective or this one reality that the gods force on you is not the only reality that there is. And there might be greater realities out there for you. And that's what I offer you. This is the thing that I offer you. And so I really like that. It's like, I'm really kind of forcing you down a path, but not me, the DM, but the god, the madness god, deity is forcing you down a path of like madness, but I'm setting you free at the same time. And is there reality in that, or are they just feeding you a line? So are they the god, or are they the patron?
Some Matrix vibes there. Like, are you going to lose your mind because you are so used to relying on the Matrix, but there's this other world out there? I'm freeing you. oh, wait
Yep.
a minute, this freedom sucks. Like,
But I want
give me the dream back.
Freedom with strings.
Right.
That's killer.
Should we roll on to a conversation about TPKs just because we promised people?
I was
We
going to
have
say
to.
there's a specific comment in chat right now that says, I think you guys said you were going to talk about TPK
Yeah.
philosophy. So I want to know from all of you, what
Right.
makes you choose a single PC to single out and make their lives miserable? And I feel like it's almost directed at Jared here.
So I know exactly who's talking about this.
I'm getting a little bit of a Jared vibe there.
It doesn't. It happens organically, I promise, even though it doesn't seem like it. We have a player who I've done several campaigns with, and his characters just continuously die. I blame
Oh,
him,
God.
not me.
Yeah, it's gotta be.
Right. Except one time I did kill his character when he wasn't around. I will never do it again. I apologize. It was a bad thing. Yeah, Mike, I'm sorry.
We had a character who died. We had someone who was running 2 characters because a player was gone, and wouldn't you know it, the guy who was gone's character got gorgoned and turned to stone. And so we all came to the agreement that we would swap him, and his character would freeze, despite the fact that he was not the one that technically failed to save and stuff. But they were both melee characters, so
That's
they were both in there. And so we're
So-
like, okay, we'll swap.
That's how
them
you know
after
you have a
combat.
good table, right?
And that's exactly what was happening with that happened with us. It's kind of a funny story, funny D&D story, because they were being led around by some kobolds, and the kobolds led them into the heart of their tribe, and they were like mid-level characters, so they were being very cavalier about these little kobolds around them, like just kind of smacking them around and stuff. And but they were like, I was explained it several times, you're swarmed by these kobolds, they're all around you, there's dozens of them. And they just kept insulting the chief. And it was great because they ended up taking out the whole tribe of kobolds, but one of them did not make it out of the encounter. So, unfortunately, it was the guy who wasn't there. So, yeah, I feel bad for that still.
Have either of y'all ever actually TPK'd and killed the whole party?
No, it's funny. I feel like I'm on the total other end of the spectrum with this game group because I'm like, based on challenge level and all that kind of thing, which you mentioned earlier, it's like balancing that is really tricky. For me, it seems like I keep going into these encounters thinking, oh man, this is I don't know how they're gonna deal with this. This could be real tough, and they just steamroll like it's not even a thing. And the feud, like, part of it is like 1 or 2 of the players have these like ridiculous AC, like 22 AC or something outrageous.
That's
and then the other,
my primary like Eberron concern is I've had an entire party of Warforged bards.
Yeah,
and it's like
those
they're
ACs
all bards, and everyone has a 19 AC, and so it was.
But AC doesn't do shit against a red dragon's fire breath. So
yeah,
Right,
so there
but-
are ways to manage it. What I've realized recently, I haven't really started to implement this directly, is that I think I've been too willing to be random about who gets attacked and not willing enough to be decisive about, like, okay, this is an intelligent creature they're facing.
Yeah,
and the
100%.
intelligent creature would do X, whether it's attack the soft, squishy, druid or wizard or what have you, or use its magical mind abilities against the fighter, that kind of stuff. I haven't gone down that road yet, but I'm prepping myself for that. Like, I know that in order for me to become better as a DM, those are the things I need to do during the game.
That's the next step.
The wife's
Yeah, I
in-
can totally feel it.
The wife's in chat right now, and she can probably attest to the number of games I've been where the DM's like, oh, you have somebody wielding a giant great axe who's, ballistic and loves fighting. Well, cool. They're the ones that get the mind control. And
Right.
I can't tell you the number of times that I've had a character go unconscious because I happened to be standing next to her because that was where it was safe. And then she got mind controlled or, something.
Right.
That's funny.
But
I don't have
that's-
an issue with the TPK as long as it's like really the dice. Like, if it's strictly like, you guys are rolling like crap, I put this in front of you, you had a choice, and you decided we're gonna fight to the death, that's on y'all.
Right, the
Yeah.
dice or the player's choice.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what I'm
Right.
saying.
So
Yeah.
that's what-
not
so
like this is a cutscene fight in a game where you have
Exactly.
to lose before you move on. Like, no, let's not
So-
take away player agency.
So I
No,
100% have in my games, I have those cutscene fights, right? Like where it's just as good fun to have like this thing happening or it's story development or whatever. And I would never allow a TPK to happen in those situations. As a matter of fact, again, what these guys are talking about in one of the first battle in our podcast, in Proficient with Skulls, we fought a creature that was kind of they were supposed to have a little bit of plot armor on them, and they were supposed to get plot armor after if they had a first death saving throw, they were going to kind of disappear from this dream sequence they were in. But then the guy rolled a nat 1 on his next day, death save. And I was like, look, I'm not going to fudge this, so we'll see what happens, like, and then we have a specific homebrew rule that lets resurrections, you have to actually roll for a resurrection to work, and it failed. So poor Yaneth, RIP, you're gone, buddy. But in general, I fully think that a TPK has to be a possibility in order to make the game as fun as it can be, right? Like you have to have the possibility of losing to make it a game in some ways, I think.
I've had some interesting conversations about that because it's a game of random chance. And so many people want there to be random chance so long as the random chance means average or better. Like, I'm going to roll for stats, but I rolled, 2 scores under 10. Can I re-roll? And it's like, well, if we're doing random stats, that's the point of random stats. You could get good, but you could get bad. Like, why are you fine with 2 18s, but you're not fine with 2 7s?
Yes. Well, that ties into why I call it 1 in 20, right?
Yeah.
So for me, like I said, for years, it was all like min-max and, hack and slash and all this kind of stuff. And then the more I got into story, the more I realized, like, oh my gosh, if you tell a good story and you're willing to go there with your character, you can have just as much fun with 1s as you can with 20s. It's all about 100%. How you perceive it and how you play it in your game. So like for me, I'm all about like that, if you will, like the average, like it'd be interesting. It'd be very interesting. What about playing a character that literally has all 10s? That's it.
Yeah.
Like, that would be a huge challenge on a certain level. Like just statistically, that would be a big challenge. But story-wise, if he like Joe Farmer got forced to be an adventurer, why and then what?
Right. And I love it because the players' choices would still have would have an even more impact in that situation where they're all 10s. Like if you're making poor choices, you're going to die. Versus, well, you have a +4, so you're going to maybe eke through anyway. I think that's a really cool idea, cool thought.
I need to get to a question about unwillingly making somebody accountable that just rolled by in chat.
Oh gosh.
But this conversation reminds me of why I like the Fantasy Flight Star Wars system so much. Have either of y'all played that before?
Have not.
Okay. In Fantasy Flight Star Wars, as well as their new like generic version of the same rule set, there's 2 axes. There is pass fail, and then there is advantage and threat. Why it's not advantage and disadvantage, I don't know. They proprietary dice, and they want to make all the names as hard as possible for everyone to get. But in D&D, if I tell you 2 guys to jump over the pit, I set the pit as, a DC 12 athletics check to jump over, and y'all roll, and 2 things happen. You either roll the number and higher and succeed, or you roll lower than the DC and you fail.
Mm-hmm.
Bam. Right? We might get crazy if you roll a 1 or a 20 and come up with some fun stuff, but as far as the actual rules are concerned, a 1 is just as bad as an 11, and a 20 is just as good as a 12.
Fair.
Well, in Star Wars, you have your pass-fail metric, so you can pass the test, but then you have your advantage and threat metric, and you can pass the test, but with threats, and the DM then gets to decide how to spin those threats to do things. You jump the pit, however, you jumped and landed so hard that the side of the wall starts collapsing, and while you're able to tuck and roll and end up on the other side of the pit, the guy who's making the next jump, it is not a 2 difficulty check, it is now a 3 difficulty check. Right? So you just raise the DC of the next pit jumper from 12 to 15. So you can make these narrative changes. Okay, well, you failed, but you rolled with advantage, and now we as a group get to try and figure out what to do with that. And I like the the buy-in that it gives characters as well, because any system where you can have characters trying to bullshit themselves into having another dice, I should totally get a boost dice in this situation because that guy over there just shot at him, so he should be turned and looking away from me. Like, boost die? Like, I like that buy-in. It's almost as bad as rogues that try to get sneak attack on everything. You know, I ran behind that telephone pole, I should get sneak attack.
That's the same mechanic in Edge of the Empire, it sounds like. Same dice stuff, right?
Edge of the Empire is Star Wars Fantasy Flight.
Oh, I apologize. I didn't
it's a blanket way for me to name all three of those systems, because there's Edge of the Empire, there's Age of Rebellion, and there's Force and Destiny, but it's the same rule set across all of them.
So I haven't played that before, but I think like it might not be raw, right, in D&D, but that's how I play, right? I don't like, I actually play, if the DC is 12 and somebody gets an 11, then they clip onto the edge of the cliff and they are hanging on. They have to do another athletics check or something like that.
Right.
If they get a 3, sayonara, you know, like you're going down the cliff. We'll see what happens down at the bottom. So I actually put a little bit of that into the game regardless. I do like the Star Wars stuff, obviously.
So that's where this conversation was going, was in D&D, you as the GMs, how do you address that? Because one of the things I try to do is having a gradient, right? Not just 50% of the numbers is, or, you know, 60% is fails and 40% are passing, and you're either one or the other. How do you have okay, well, as long as you roll above an 8, you know, you can make the jump, but now you're hanging. As long as you make above a 12, you make it to the other side, but blank. And if you make an 18 and higher, like, is there any examples that the pair of you can think about putting that gradient into your stories?
Totally.
So
or related, do you have any good examples of falling forward, letting players fail at a thing, but then making it narratively continue the story? Ready?
100%.
Go.
Yes, both.
Yeah, me too. So Gregory, go ahead.
Sure. So I don't know if either of you are familiar with Open Legend RPG. That came out about a year ago. Pretty fun, and I tried it and really like it. I from the Star Wars game as well. So from a little bit from both. I like the idea of failing with consequences. So if I, like, using your same example, if you set the DC as a 12 to jump over a pit and someone rolls an 11, then it might be a thing where, okay, they stumble and they need assistance. And if that works, then they're okay. If they did, like, by 5 or more, they fail, but they roll, like you said, like a 3, then they probably are just going to fall right in the pit. In the way I'm kind of running things, I also sort of do a similar thing where especially I find on like things like investigations and survival checks and that sort of thing, where it's the kind of thing that, like, given enough time, they're going to succeed. I let the rolls basically dictate how long it takes. So if you roll for a survival check and you get like an 18, then you're probably going to be pretty quick in you know, figuring out whatever you're trying to discover. Whereas if you roll an 8, okay, it's going to take you 20 minutes or an hour or you know, a longer amount of time, but you'll still get there. That's how I've started to incorporate.
I do gradients of information, but also gradients of time as well. That's one of those that I hear people do, and I try to add it to my game, and sometimes I forget. It's like one of those kind of like things that it's not always at the top of my head to go, oh, that took 20 minutes because it was only a 12 or whatever. But I do like that concept.
The intelligence related and sometimes wisdom related ones are primarily where that comes from for me. I don't like there just being you rolled an 8, you get nothing. You rolled an 8, you know that, you know, this gang is pirates in the local area. You rolled a 12, you know this gang is pirates in the local area, and they target merchant ships out by the hull breakers. You rolled a 15, you know that the pirates in the local area, they target ships by the hull breaker. Their leader is Captain, you know, Bronzebeard, and, you know, they're normally drinking down on the docks in this bar. You rolled a 20 plus, you know, whatever.
Totally.
Yeah. So, but even with physical challenges, so for instance, like go back to the pit, we had this exact thing happen in Proficient with Skulls, where actually on 2 separate rolls, our paladin just barely passed or maybe just barely failed. I can't remember. and we did that thing where he was literally, even though he's a dragonborn with wings in our world, the wings hit the side of the wall. It was a narrow area. It wasn't a pit, by the way, that any of them were supposed to fall in. It was supposed to be like just jump over it, let's move on to the next thing. He was hanging on by a thread, and then our barbarian ended up trying to throw our cleric over the pit and failed miserably. We spent a whole episode afterwards with our cleric separated from the party, falling through to the next level of the pit, and really explored some of his backstory via that kind of miscue or mistake. So I think it's more about, yes, there's gradients. But even when they fail, I think that you, as a GM, as a DM, can turn that into something that's beneficial for the character, for the story, for the campaign.
Right.
And so
that's one of my favorite things about our character death conversation is how you can turn that into beneficial things for the character, the story, and the campaign. Because, yeah, sometimes it sucks that your, really sweet orc warlord character who was going to die in glorious battle, like, died to a kobold's knees. But, like, sometimes you can really, like, figure out, like, okay, we died in the bottom of the Tomb of Annihilation. That's exactly what my barbarian character would have wanted. Like, in here, trying to stop, this death curse, doing things like this is what that character lived for. And he may have not saw it all the way through, but the fact that he enabled the party to get to where they need to go means that he was a success in his mission.
It was a good death.
Yeah, and my experience with character deaths has been that when one of my characters has died, it led to more awesome story for everybody in the group, including the person that died. Because, okay, you died, they saved your body, they went back to this was my paladin, right? They take you back to your church, and the church is going to have you revived because you're one of the champions. But now you're even more on the hook to the church than you were before, because now you have to go to prove that you're still a worthy champion. You've got to go out on this other quest to prove your worthiness and to reclaim this relic or whatever the heck it is. So I think those can absolutely lead to better
some really good bonds between characters.
Yeah.
You had the guy that got turned into stone. Well, we had to carry him out of the dungeon with some finagling of a Tensor's floating disc and some other magical wheelbarrow effects here. But we literally had to drag this guy around, and we're glad that it was not the Goliath that got frozen, that it was, a small character, so he didn't weigh literally tons. But, one character in particular made it their mission to, recover that guy. And it ended up being the player who was playing. It was the player who was gone. So when he came back and found out that it wasn't his character who was a hat rack, it was his buddy who voluntarily took him, as a player, he was like, thanks, bro. But in character, those two now had this whole side arc going on because they were face to face fighting the monster, and he was right beside his friend who got frozen. And so now it was his, he still needed to do that thing that the campaign was about. But there was a solid, I want to say 10 sessions of, I need my buddy back, right? And so it can really move the story forward.
Yeah, that's DM gold. That stuff's perfect.
So much to dig into in there. Yep. Perfect.
So tell me about this involuntary cannibalism thing. Why is chat talking so much about cannibals? What happened
involuntary cannibalism? So I think Drinkopedia podcast was talking about the end of the world, and I can't remember the specific. They were talking about what would happen if random podcast had to turn to cannibalism for survival in the end of the world. And we realized that because Proficient with Skulls is spread out over the whole country, we'd be in a lot of trouble because we are, we're separated. We're not together. We can't band together as a group. I believe that's what the comment is. I don't know exactly, but I think that's where we came from.
There's all cap comments. No, you did this to me. How dare you defer the blame?
I don't remember cannibalizing anybody, so
he doesn't even remember doing that to your character.
Involuntary cannibalism.
This is our 10-minute warning, by the way. If we're gonna kill it at an hour, we're at about 10 minutes, but I'm fine going a little bit later. I always get distracted with these things, but just so that y'all have in the back of your minds. One more good final topic or question. Who wants to pick?
Real quick. I remember what he's talking about now. All I ever said to him was an NPC served him a meal that tasted bad. And that's where the players went with it. So I'll just leave it at that. I never said anything about cannibalism. So
yeah. So that's actually leads me to a question I wanted to ask for both of you guys. How do you do you find, let me ask it a different way. One of the things I love most is creativity.
Right.
And I find that I asked my players very specifically, like, please don't say, can I make an insight check? I'd rather you said, do I think this person is lying to me?
Yeah.
So, because I want to try to inspire them to be more creative. Now, specifically, I'm thinking with like casters and anyone for that matter, thinking like, I mean, I don't mean to sound cliche, but like thinking out of the box, like doing the unexpected in a way that advances the gameplay, but also creates an amazing story moment. You know, I love awarding inspiration, and I feel like those are the things that I want to get from the players, but I don't necessarily know how to draw that out of the players. Like some players maybe do it naturally, but
I think
do you guys have any insight into that? It could be, but is there a way we can inspire them?
There's definitely an interesting difference between groups, right? As a guy who runs a lot of one-shots, it's really interesting seeing how creative certain groups are with the same adventures. So, you know, Foul Happenings, the one-shot y'all did, I have run that 3, if not 4 times now. You guys are the only group that there was even a chicken mentioned, right? So you guys have this entire half-hour subplot involving chickens and hanging out of that farm where some people were just like, lizard attacks? Cool. They came from that way? Cool. And off into the swamp. So some people fought zombies in the swamp and did all that stuff, and it was just a combat march for them. You guys had this whole super creative chicken expedition. And another group decided, you know what, if it's the lighthouse that's the problem, why am I going to march through a swamp for 3 days? Let's hire a boat, right? And so they circumnavigated everything and went straight out there on a ship and was like, hey, the light's out. Cool. Well, I kind of feel like I have to take just a hair of a back seat at the beginning of the adventure and let people kind of get see how the party's going to mesh. And then from there start kind of building on that. And so one of the things that I do is I provide different members of the party different information. Yeah, the first guy who walks in the door is going to get some information, but I don't just give everything to the fighter who kicked the door down. Fighter kicks the door down, takes a couple steps in the room, and I say, this is what you see. But I then give some more information to other people in the party so that they have to start communicating between each other. Hey guys, I smell something, because the fighter is jumped in, he's got the axe, and he's looking around for a bad guy, but he's not like necessarily taking time to smell the roses. Well, the character who's up against the door jamb waiting, that's their primary sense, because they can't see, they can only hear, and they hear stomping fighter and they can smell. So I spread information across the group to get them talking to each other and talking to me, because now that person goes, okay, well, I smell dead bodies. Is it coming from inside the room? And down the chain. So the more people I give information to, the more people are going to interact with me and with each other.
I like that.
That's a really great way to do it. I like that. I'm going to try to incorporate some more of that. Gregory, to answer your question, I think the question, what does that look like? I know it's simple. I know it seems very intuitive. I think it's very basic, but I think doing it at different stages in a player's career or time in your campaign makes a difference, because I think players who are new, who are not comfortable with role playing, at least gives them a chance to kind of think about, well, what would that look like? It's just not just I'm reading a mechanic off a page. And then you get players who have spent a little time and they're more comfortable with it, and they can really get into it. So, I asked one of our players, what does that look like one time, just expecting kind of a pat answer. And, he started talking about how he was casting magic stone and he found some pebbles on the ground. And what he does is, and now this is canon and it's great in our campaign, he always puts the magic stones in his mouth and just kind of swishes them around a little bit, and they get coated with this poison magic, and then he slings them. So I mean,
Nice.
and that's gold. I love that type of stuff. And I think that question is really simple. If it's a a DM tip, it's an easy DM tip, right? Just always ask, what does that look like? So don't
Yeah.
just go, okay, I cast magic missile. What do your
The
magic missiles look like?
Yeah,
That type of thing.
the Matt Mercer, like, how do you want to do this? Like, you
Yeah,
got the killing blow
Right.
is a trope at this point, but
right.
how do you want to do this is a great question. Whether they're whether it's the killing blow or whether they're just doing
Agreed.
something,
Yep.
and so you can pick moments, and as a GM, you need to take multiple factors into account. Hey, this is a one shot, and we got like an hour left. Like, not every
Right.
axe swing needs a description,
Yes.
but you can pick that character who's kind of taking the back seat and not super into the role play or whatever. And Cora ran in with her axe, and she hasn't really said anything for like 20 minutes. So this is my moment to inject more Cora into the world, and not
Right.
just if that character's shy or whatever, give them a chance to open up more, but also kind of, hey guys, remember that this character's here. So like, hey, what do you how are you doing that? And
Exactly.
that serves the purpose on multiple levels, I feel.
Yep.
Mm.
But it's a great question, and one of the things I have the hardest time doing, especially since
Agreed.
I run so many one shots. I feel like every single game is just me going, okay, here's 5 people who have never met each other and I've never played with.
Right.
I have 4 hours to not only figure out all of their quirks, figure out how they're going to interact, and make sure we mostly stay on track here. And so it's, if nothing else, it's a great exercise. Run some one shots for Twitter
Yeah.
people sometime, and like let that put your DMing skills to the test. And
Yeah,
so
for sure. Very
Serious
cool.
improv. That's one of the. So with the chicken run, foul happening.
Happenings.
Yeah. What's so epic about that, in my opinion, is that here it is a month later. I know this is something I will talk about for years.
Yep.
It's just one of those silly things that happens in a game that it was so fun. That's the kind of 12-year-old stuff that I love about D&D. No
Yep.
matter how old I get, if I'm with the right group of people, this game makes me feel so free and like just connected to like joy and fun and
Agreed.
silliness. And even if it's serious, like hardcore, dark, like life and death moments, you can still have this lightheartedness that comes in and creates those awesome moments.
I'm
I
with
think
you.
that
100%.
the tone, the way that you can shift between tones, the way that you would expect from a story, is a really great fun thing, because I know groups who would always want silly laid back games like the one that we played in. I
Right.
know groups that's what they want out of D&D, but I also know groups who can do that, but then can switch and go to the grim dark. Everyone does, super voices all the time and stuff
Mhm.
like that. And I appreciate that you can make RPGs what you want them to, and
Right.
that even if you're playing the same system, you can modify a system to do a lot of stuff. There's already people playing Star Wars 5e, and there's a Cyberpunk 5e that Dragon Turtle Games is coming out with, and so
Oh, I need to play that.
Yeah, I'm going to get into that. I've got some thoughts on that
how do
whole
you-
thing.
Right. Oh God, I had a great question. It just slipped through.
we're talking about Cyberpunk.
Yeah,
How do you?
it'll come
Gone.
back to me in a moment.
Gone.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, the last thing I got then, before, if you don't think of it, the last thing I got is, besides 5e, what all systems have you guys played, and what systems, if any, is on your to-do list or I want to-do list? And just know that, hey man, D&D is what I play, and that's all we play, is a perfectly fine answer.
So let me go real quick because it's not a long list.
5e.
Basic, advanced, 3, 5, 4, 5e. So all D&D basically. I've never played anything else. Like, I am one of the only kind of tabletop gamers that, well, not one of the only, but very few other people have only ever played D&D, and I've never played anything else. And I'm really excited because we're doing a crossover event with Dungeon Masters Test Kitchen. We're going to play 13th Age, which I know is kind of it's close to D&D, but it's a little bit different. And so I'm excited to get a chance to play that and try that out. But I have played just D&D. I kind of feel bad about that.
Is there anything you want to play, or again, I don't play RPGs. I only play D&D is a perfectly acceptable answer.
You know, I've always really kind of had that mindset, but I would love to play. I'm very open to playing anything, and as I'm kind of getting more into this tabletop world, I love Star Wars. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, so I'd love to play like a Star Wars. Either you could do a Star Wars 5e, really, but that's what I love about D&D. Actually, it's very you could pretty much do anything you want
It's
in
adaptable.
the system. Yeah, but I'd like to try some of the Star Wars RPGs.
So there is the 5e Star Wars thing, but give me like a year and a half when I'm back and
Yes.
settled. Gregory, have you played the starter set for Edge of the Empire yet?
I've played three or four sessions in Edge of the Empire. I absolutely want to play it again, and I was going to ask you about it tonight. I know you're
have you
busy.
specifically played the starter set? I mean, it's a conversation we can have on Discord after the fact. But if you two were willing, I know the wife would probably sit through it again. I would run the starter set for that so that you can see that, yeah, 5e Star Wars is still very much 5e, but it'd be interesting, especially to somebody who's played all of the D&Ds but never another system.
Right.
Not to call you out like that, but I
But it is.
love taking people and going, hey, check out what this system does, and then they go, man, this thing is really cool. How can I homebrew that kind of stuff
Yeah.
in the thing that I'm used to? So I might
Yep.
have to drag both of you into a Star Wars, if not the starter set, then at least a one shot.
Yes, please.
Tell me when and where, man. That sounds
Yep.
great.
Totally. So I
Same
guess
bat channel 1.5 years
Right.
from now.
Yeah, right.
So for me, I have had tons of experience with different things, dabbling, but also sometimes a little more in depth.
Mhm.
D&D was the first, of course. I've also played Cyberpunk. We're currently running BattleTech RPG. It's sort of a homebrew. Brett has made it his own game in a sense to just
Right.
streamline things. I have tried Edge of the Empire, like I said, 3 or 4 sessions. Absolutely love it. Want to play more of it. I tried Open Legend RPG and really loved it. And I'm trying to think. That might be the only. Oh no, way back in. So Car Wars is another big one that I've done, which is Steve Jackson games. It's awesome fun.
Yeah.
It's like Road Warrior, basically, if that's
Right.
Mad Max stuff.
Mhm.
And then or Death
Vigilante 8.
Race. Yeah,
Vigilante 8. Back
it's
from
awesome,
Nintendo 64.
right? And then so Car Wars, and there was another great game way back called Toon that I played like one time, which was silliness, absolute madness.
What is that?
Is it
Exactly.
Toon?
I mean, it like you make a cartoon character,
Yeah, okay.
Oh,
and you
Toon.
pretty much
Toon.
Toon.
I didn't know if it was UNE.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
No. Sorry,
You
Toon.
play a rock
And
band.
you pretty much play cartoon characters. You
That
could be
sounds awesome.
anything you want. I actually made a cartoon die, like a D6. That was
Okay.
Oh, wow. Nice. Cool.
but that was like when I was 13 or something. So, but I have I have had the Shadowrun book on my shelf since I think it's the first edition Shadowrun book, and have never played Shadowrun.
All right.
So that's one that's like on the list. There's one that I've seen rolling around that I just heard about recently. Something like Out of the Lake, or from the lake. I can't think of it now. You had to ask.
Beats me.
No.
Yeah, it
Got
looks like it's a real fun. Like you're supposed to be like kids, like teenagers.
Tales from the Loop.
Yes, Tales from the Loop.
That's one of
Thank
the
you.
top ones on my to-do list. I got the core book somewhere in a box behind me. It's fun. Stream just sees a sweet little background. You guys have to look at the fact that I have a piece of green cloth duct taped to everything I own in boxes back there.
That's
All
all
right.
But the bottom row is just all my RPG books, because I have so many RPGs at this point that I have to put like, third edition is the bottom of this box, fourth edition is the bottom, so that I'm not breaking boxes.
Yeah.
But so
3.5 is actually the only D&D that I never officially played. I got the books and I was like, this is cool. I got all this cool. I can do this. I can specialize. And none of my friends were at all interested. Like not even a little bit. Like, damn it. So I kind of skipped over 3.5.
Hey,
So-
BH, I have a question for you just real quick, and we can, if we need to wrap up, I know we got you, but are you going to get to play when you're deployed? Are you going to know people?
That is a great question. I don't know, and I don't know the quality of my internet. The last time that I was in the country that I'm going to, which I won't mention since we're broadcasting.
Of course.
Last time I was there, I was paying $30 a month for it's their internet. However, that was a decade ago, but it was like just enough that like I could fire up a YouTube video and then hit pause and go take a shower and then come back and watch my 5-minute YouTube video.
Right.
So if that's still the case, then probably not. I was in Qatar a couple of years ago, and I actually had, it wasn't the best internet, but I was able to have a weekly campaign.
Nice.
It was just, A, I was a player because I had no time to do any prep.
Right.
And B, it was at 3 a.m. local time on my day off, which was okay because I was already working night shift, but I would get home from work at midnight, sleep for 2 hours, wake up, go put my laundry in, and then come down and play D&D for 4 hours.
Right.
And then, you know, at the halfway point when we did our break, I'd swap laundry. And as soon as the session finished, I would like get all my clothes and then pass out because in 8 hours I had to go do another 12 to 16 hour shift. So I don't know. I've already, you know, been planning, if nothing else, I can record like cell phone videos and then upload them when I have time. You know, I got that sweet channel intro. Welcome to OneCritWonder, the only channel where you can watch a guy talk about RPGs and hope he doesn't get hit by one.
Right.
Sorry.
I'm sorry to be laughing, but it's...
Right. I don't know if I should laugh at that. I'm just going to leave it there.
But I don't know. If I have internet, I would like to keep doing Roll Hide Don't Die because I feel like I could record like 5-minute, you know, here and there. It'll just be me in a room or out in the middle of nowhere, recording real quick, talking about something, and then posting it so people can respond on Twitter and the YouTube comments. And again, I just like those conversation starter things.
Yeah.
But I don't think that I would have a comfortable enough schedule to do like 4-hour actual play videos.
Yeah.
And if I normally have 4 hours free, I'd like to keep rocking out classes because that's kind of the best time to do it. Literally the best time to knock out classes for me is when I'm in the desert, which is kind of sad, I guess. But if I have internet, I will continue to bug you guys and I will continue to talk about nerd stuff. And if I don't have internet, it's the perfect time to sit there and put a whole bunch of campaign notes to paper so that when I come back, I can do stuff. But it's also my chance, since I never talked about my systems, my current to-do list, I have the books, but I need to like actually read and learn the systems. I got Tales from the Loop back there I want to learn, and probably GM, because of course as a forever GM I end up being the tutor slash GM for every system. Tales from the Loop is back there. I got Starfinder core book. I'm curious to see what similarities it shares with Pathfinder. Been watching a little bit of the actual plays and stuff for it, but I need to like deep dive on the rules. Genesis, which is the skeleton for Edge of the Empire and the other Star Wars systems. Rip all the Star Wars off, make it generic so that you have rules for fantasy, you have rules for steampunk, you have rules for weird war, modern, sci-fi, and then space opera. So anything from steampunk to cyberpunk to Star Wars to Firefly, whatever you got going on, you just grab the rules from those sections. So you want to play a world like Shadowrun, get the magic rules, bolt them onto the cyberpunk near future rules, bam, Shadowrun. Cool.
Awesome.
Very cool. Yeah.
So that's a big one on my to-do list. And then I have a few smaller systems. Kids on Bikes is lighter and kind of in that Tales from the Loop, like Stranger Things kind of vibe. You're a bunch of teenagers and something weird happened, go figure it out. What's another one? Seven Seas is something I want to check out.
I've heard of that one. I want to check that one out too.
And then the wife tells me that I need to run Crash Panda games because we just watched the Critical Role playing Crash Pandas. Have you guys heard of that at all?
I've seen Critical Role playing them.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
It looks super fun.
I want to tinker with more of those, like just like here's a one-off for a random system because A, it's great to explore again the mechanics of other systems, but B, you guys are both content creators, and any content creators who are listening to this, being like one of the few people who have played something random is a great way to get views and comments. Yeah, there's a ton of people searching for D&D stuff, but there's also a ton of D&D stuff, so you're fighting a
Right.
very saturated market.
Yep.
And a few of us in this other group that I'm in, the Notorious DMG, one of the reasons we were looking to run those little things is like, man, if you go search this adventure or this system, there's like no one playing it on YouTube.
Right.
So if someone grabs Tales from the Loop and they're like, I want to run this adventure, but then there's only one person running that adventure or talking about that adventure on YouTube or wherever, they're going to be directed your way. So I would be curious to grab stuff right as it's coming out, or older stuff that hasn't seen a lot of traction, and just like, hey, here's a game that the internet in as a whole kind of like passed by.
Right.
Who's 5 people that wants to run this?
Yeah.
Right.
That's cool.
But I digress.
Mhm.
Any
That's
final
what we're here for.
final questions or rambles we want to go on? We're at an hour and 15, so I could give you 15 more minutes and call it an hour and a half if anyone has anything else.
Are you guys looking forward to the next set that they're releasing here over the summer?
The
This-
Salt Marsh stuff?
Yeah.
I didn't get to do anything with Salt Marsh when it was air quote new. But it's one of the things where, see that previous conversation, I was looking at older like 2E and 3E adventures to convert to 5E and then run, so that
Right.
A, I could run the old stuff that I never got to, but B, like people who played it a long time ago and vaguely remember it or didn't get to play it would have a chance to do so. And when you
Right.
know it, I converted about half of the Salt Marsh Adventure to 5E, and then the book dropped, and I was like, "You fuckers!" So I still have like half of it, but at this point, like, who cares about my conversion if there's an official book, right? So,
You
That's a
know,
good
right,
sign that
exactly.
your instincts are
But
right.
yeah, you're right in the right path, right? It's just
yeah,
Wizards got beat you about by a little bit. Kate Welch is the lead designer along with Mike Morose on that. And if you've ever watched Kate Welch on, oh my gosh, why I watch it every week.
Acquisitions Inc.
Acquisition, it's the C team. Thank you. Yeah, the C team.
C-Team.
She's great. And so, and she's got kind of a spunky, punky vibe going on. So
Yeah.
I don't know how that will play with Salt Marsh, but I'm very, very interested to see what it looks like and how I can incorporate it into some of the stuff I'm doing.
If nothing else, there's going to be stuff from that book that I steal, even if I don't
Right.
run Salt
Yeah,
Marsh.
that's yes,
If
exactly.
there's a ton of nautical stuff in there,
Yes.
you guys have seen that little sandboxy area that I was talking about. Well, like I said, one group like jumped on the boat and started doing stuff. That area and south of there in my homebrew world could greatly benefit from a lot of like creepy salt marshy nautical type stuff. So I feel like even if I don't use Salt Marsh, I will be able to take pieces of Salt Marsh and bolt it
Yeah.
directly onto that swamp that you guys
Yeah,
have
exactly.
worshipped a chicken in. So, you know, Sorrow is probably definitely still stomping around in that swamp somewhere.
He
And I'm
is,
going
that's
to
what he
have
does.
to have a campaign around there.
I
And
love it.
Yeah, pirates and that kind of thing, and also like underwater stuff is very intriguing to me because I feel like it's a very underexplored.
I've never done it at all.
Yeah,
I've never
like,
done underwater, but I've made several like Triton and Merfolk characters, hoping that I would get to play them, or hoping that I would play them in a game and the DM would like, you know, expand upon that.
Sure.
And never got to play them. The like super awesome Triton that I made for Tomb of Annihilation, where I was like a barbarian in Tomb of Annihilation, I'll be dead in session 3 and totally get to play this Triton. Nope, my barbarian made it to like level 8, I want to say, before he got turned into a statue. And then at that point, we had other people join the party, and then we were too melee heavy, and I didn't want to add a samurai fighter in there, so I opted to go as a caster. And so I never got to play that character, but I think he's really cool, and I would love to
Yeah.
play him in Salt Marsh. Based on what I know about Salt Marsh, I could make it work. Excuse me.
Sweet.
Cool.
Yeah. Very cool.
Final thoughts. Going once. Going twice. All right.
I could talk about this stuff forever. So
Yeah, I'm like
That's
we
the
have to
problem.
stop. That's I guess.
Yeah.
Um,
yeah.
I want to keep these things short, so we'll go ahead and wrap it up here.
Yep.
I might be able to swing one like early July and would love to grab you guys and have you back on. But if not, once I get back to the States and figure out the like, hey, we have a child now, and handle that whole thing, I'm gonna start doing these again. Hopefully at some kind of regular intervals. Like I would like it to be like a Monday night kind of thing. But of course, life first.
Of course.
But I do
Family
appreciate
first.
having you
Yep.
both on here. And so feel free to, I will give you guys the audio of this if you want to do whatever you need to with it.
That'd be great.
But
Cool.
yeah, keep hanging out in my Discord. Keep bugging me. I will definitely run more games for you. I will try to con you into running games for me because I have a bunch of terrible character
Absolutely.
ideas that I need to subject y'all to since I handled Lord Cluck. I feel like you owe me.
100%. I'm happy to run a game for you guys anytime.
And if you guys don't have anything else for me, I'm gonna go ahead and get off of here and go feed the wife some dessert.
There's
Awesome,
too
man.
much, but we got to save something for next time.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
very true. So think about that question that you forgot and don't remember, and that'll be our opening for next time. So
There you go.
thanks everyone. Thanks for
All right.
hanging out. We
Bye,
are
everybody.
out of here.
Thanks.
I wanted to give a big thanks to both the folks that I had on this episode. Not only were they a ton of fun to sit down and talk with in terms of the GM interview, like we said, they were tons of fun to actually play with in the one shot that we did. So big shout out to both of them. But I wanted to give an extra shout out to Gregory. He's kind of been on this little adventure since the beginning because I'm approaching about 2,000 followers on Twitter, and he's in my first 50, and some of those were my cat. So I think it's really important to really give that signal boost to newer creators that are first getting their content out there. And not only did he help me do that, I want to help him do that. So I'm going to have a link to his channel right here. Please go check out his stuff. He's an excitable guy, and while I'm sitting here playing with his new uniform and doing sound checks, he's already out there bragging about how much fun he had. So go check him out, guys. And Rawhide, don't die. And stuff. Bye.